I am the outlaw, Robin Hood.
I always find it intriguing when a familiar character is given a fresh twist in a new adaptation, and that's why The Death of Robin Hood has been on my watch list ever since it was first announced. The initial marketing strategy really appealed to me. I mean, the legendary folk hero has appeared on screen numerous times. We all grew up watching various versions of him in action as the iconic Messiah, robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. But that's not how this movie portrays him at all. And this revisionist take from director Michael Sarnoski is what got my attention in the first place. The gritty reimagining of Robin Hood, starring Hugh Jackman as the titular character, sets itself apart from all other previous adaptations with the hard-hitting line, "He was no hero." And now that the early reviews for this film are out, I thought it might be worth checking out what the critics are saying about this one. We should probably start by telling you that the early reviews are highly polarized, and I guess that makes sense in such a genre. You don't usually get a unilateral response when something so unconventional is brought to the screen, and a slow-burning period drama focused on changing all that you hold dear about Robin Hood might not be everyone's cup of tea. That being said, there are a lot of promising things that I've been hearing and reading about this movie, and it really makes me want to go check it out on the big screen. The first thing that impressed us about this movie is the story. This time around, we've got an old and battle-weary Robin Hood, played by Hugh Jackman, and Robin Hood is tired of his heroic reputation. But the real twist is that his life of crime and robbery wasn't for charitable reasons, which is how we've all heard and known the legend of Robin Hood. So Robin has been living a lie, and it's redemption time for an old man who actually has some good in him to turn the tide. As you can imagine, such storytelling has to be pensive and sensitive, and this is something that Michael Sarnoski has done really well. As Variety states in its review, Sarnoski de-romanticizes the legend with keen attention to historic and atmospheric detail and a studious interest in how stories are told and retold through time. The story sets the stage with Robin Hood grappling with his past after a long and weary life of crime and murder. He's brought back for one last mission, which he thinks will be his last, but the battle leaves him seriously injured. He finds himself in the care of a mysterious woman, and it just so happens that fate offers him a chance to redeem himself. Battered and bruised, Robin Hood finds the perfect supportive figure in Sister Bridget, and he heals in a new world surrounded by orphans and the dying. This is really what changes his perspective, and maybe his final days are the best time to prove his legacy. It sounds pretty straightforward, right? But there is a catch. This movie is anything but simple, and you can either appreciate the artwork of the narrative as it tries to capture all the complicated emotions, or you can hate it for being somewhat slow and dull. With these early reviews, there seems to be no in-between, so perhaps now you understand why it's such a polarizing movie. Personally, I think it's pretty daring of the director to choose a story that's not solely focused on adventure or heroism, but exploring the psychological consequences of a life like his. Deadline's review calls it a completely original take where the band of merry men are long gone, the bow and arrows are as lethal as an AR-15, and a gray-haired, muddied Robin Hood presents himself in the farthest reaches of a battlefield where combatants simply beat each other to death in brutally violent fights. There is a lot of violence in action as well, in case you're considering skipping it, thinking it's a snooze fest. In fact, The Hollywood Reporter's review says, "The extreme violence is rendered in graphic, gory fashion that seeks to remind you that medieval England was no country for old men." The other major positive about this movie is the performance of Hugh Jackman, and nearly every critic has been impressed by his compelling acting, which makes the role convincing. As we mentioned, this isn't the gallant and fearless Robin Hood we knew, but a man who's forced to confront the ghosts of his past. Jackman brings depth, vulnerability, and intensity to the role, and every scene stands out and feels personal. The director has also put together a perfect cast, and others, like Bill Skarsgård and Jodie Comer, are also exceptional in their respective roles. Even putting the very experienced Skarsgård aside, Jodie Comer is brilliant with her mysterious and emotional acting. Her character serves as the guide to Robin Hood's redemption saga, and she makes this a story of forgiveness and second chances. This is a hostile world, and Comer's character brings in a much-needed soft touch and some optimism. As expected, Bill Skarsgård can be unsettling and charismatic at the same time, a skill that not many actors possess. The film's visuals are sure to leave you spellbound. As described by Justin Chang from Variety, the film is beautifully shot and designed in a full rainbow of earth and stone and sackcloth, and performed with grace and conviction by Jackman and a well-chosen ensemble. The director has enough experience to make sure that this film is beautifully laid out and there's tons of haunting imagery, but you still can't miss out on the atmospheric landscapes that also reflect the emotional state of the characters. For me, the best part of the visual experience is how the film feels both realistic and mythic at the same time, something that you would expect from a movie in this genre. This is where the director really steals the show. You see, Michael Sarnoski might be a relatively young director, but he already has some very impressive films under his belt. Who could forget his work on A Quiet Place Day One? Back in 2021, it was a gritty thriller titled Pig, which brought him into the limelight, and I'd say he's done fairly well for himself since, bagging big projects like The Death of Robin Hood. Personally, I'm a fan of his directorial vision, and the negative criticism isn't going to steer me away from this one. Finally, we can't highlight the importance of a powerful score enough, and this has been pointed out by many of the critics. It really is the cherry on top, adding to the brilliant screenplay, and maybe you should find out for yourself if the narrative is to your taste. As you've seen from the early reviews, the critics have vouched for both the positives and the negatives, but I think the review of Courtney Howard from Mashable sums things up very nicely when they call this film a kinetic, brilliant, new generational legend and a profound rumination on mortality. Of course, this review wouldn't be complete without highlighting some of the flaws that have been pointed out by the critics. You see, there's a heavy dose of cynicism in the story, and this doesn't appeal to everyone. The pacing isn't fast enough to make it a solid thrill ride, and the movie voluntarily chooses to be this way. As Brian Tallarico from RogerEbert.com puts it, The Death of Robin Hood is an unpleasant and cynical slog, despite a promising cast. Even David Ehrlich from IndieWire has said that the movie feels inert as a thriller and generally feckless as a character. The runtime might be a bit of a bother, especially for those who go in expecting a quick and thrilling adventure. The Hollywood Reporter says, you spend most of the film's overlong runtime wishing that its main character would die a quicker death. Now, that might be harsh, but I've got to admit, it might be true for many who don't want to sit patiently for the character-driven story. The dialogue has been termed less than impressive by many because the director has focused more on setting the mood and tone with the shifting color palette. Additionally, many weren't exactly happy with the appearance of Hugh Jackman, even though we found his look to be quite fitting for the circumstances. There are critics who have termed his appearance Yeti-like, something they probably don't associate with the glamorous Wolverine. One critic said, "The legendary bandit's gray-haired reckoning isn't a reluctant spectacle, nor does it pull our heartstrings as taut as his faithful bow." Even this is tied to the general perception that we have of Robin Hood. I can't entirely blame people for finding faults with overhauling his heroics to this extent. Also, this is essentially a period drama, and I've got to admit that the bar for such films and shows is set very high after some big names in recent years. Overall, I'd say that the movie is a mixed bag, but the final package is something that really interests me. I'm okay with playing the waiting game and watching the deeper emotions and conflicting characters, and I highly recommend checking it out if it sounds like that's to your taste. It's the kind of movie where you can't tell if you love it or hate it until you watch it, and surely a team of talented actors and directors deserves a chance. We'd love to hear your take on the film in the comments down below, and don't forget to let us know what you would have changed about The Death of Robin Hood. Also, if you appreciate our efforts in bringing you this content and you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to see more videos like it. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see ya in the next one.